Hello everyone, this is Coach Albert Platt, graduate student at California Baptist University, and today I'm going to be going over my critical assignment fitness education presentation. And I see if you look at my cover page, it shows more information and my email address. Now, my critical assignment fitness education presentation was for my client, which I was helping, Coach Ruben Platt, which I was helping for his upcoming football season. To see if he was going to be physically fit and ready to go for his season, if he's having any deficiencies or if he was in shape or work with his exercise regimen. So the next slide I have is the health and movement. Let me go over here. Health and movement assessment. So for my client, football coach Ruben Platt, I use different tools for health and movement assessments to kind of see what, like if he was, like I said, physically fit to coach this year. So I used two different tests. I used the PARQ questionnaire, which was to find health-related information of client for exercise and physical activity. This questionnaire I did to kind of find out a little more background information on my client. The results he posted had no problems for the common sense questions, and he had no issues on his health status guidelines for exercising safely. Now, the functional movement screen test is a test involved in the 7 fundamental movement screening assessments, which involves the D squat, hurdle step, inline lunge, the shoulder mobility, the active straight leg raise, the trunk mobility, and the rotary stability. This test requires a balance of mobility and stability, and these fundamental movements patterns are designed to offer an apparent performance of basic or motor skills and stabilizing movements. So I also use this test, the functional movement screen assessment, to kind of see if my client had any deficiencies or any problems with his mobility. So my results from my FMS results were my client had shoulder mobility issues and a little bit of deficiency in the hip flexors, a little weak, but not too bad on the scoring. He required a combination of motions including like adduction, internal rotation, flexion, extension, and adduction, internal rotation. Now, his health and movement results influenced the creation and optimal strategy success by targeting mobility issues of the shoulder. So after I did the assessment, I kind of figured out, what are the things he needed to solve this problem, and also when I was designing his exercise plan, I really wanted to focus on those issues he had. He's an old college football player that had many years of playing and training, a lot of wear and tear, so hopefully this coming season he'll be physically fit after I gave him the structure for the season. Now, I started my periodization with my client. His goal was to be physically fit to coach the upcoming football season. Increase strength and power as well, speed development, so he could be physically active on the field, coaching his players, and also running around, exemplifying certain techniques. Now, the periodization style that I used was a medium-sized cycle of training, a mesocycle, which I assembled in a basic block of traditional periodization model, simply known as like a linear periodization. Now, my exercise selection for this, I incorporate a lot of static and dynamic stretching warm-ups, especially in his shoulders, which I focus on his deficiency of his mobility of his shoulders and his hip flexors. Well, I also tried to maintain flexibility throughout his training, with resistance, anaerobic, aerobic, and plyometric training. Now, I also did an exercise order to consist of sequences of resistance exercise performed 1 day of training, forcing, his capabilities to complete a set with proper technique and mechanics. So I started the session. All the sessions I started with my his workout regimen was with static and dynamic warm-up. And I included a push and pull exercise regimen, alternating exercise depending on the day and the week. So I feel that this is going to really improve his recovery, including between exercise by the alternating effects, especially targeting his immobility of his shoulders and his slight weakness of his hips. Now, for the frequency, exercise frequency and intensity and the progression I periodized was during the 8-week cycle, consistent of the same number of set and repetitions across training days. Depending on the day in the week, would vary in training load for the increased strength and power and speed of my client. So what I did was I progressed increasing the frequency and a well-balanced intensity, but I also monitored his scheduled duration of the time he's working out. I also recommended 1 to 2 days of rest and recovery to increase performance and maintain anaerobic fitness as well. In his frequency, his intensity, and duration that will not exceed 10% each week, keeping my client, well rested and activated for maximum performance while he's working out on the field or even in training when he's actually in the weight room or he's doing any type of physical activity outside. The techniques that I really wanted to focus on is, the deficiencies of my client, as I stated earlier, was the shoulder mobility and the hips. And I wanted to target that area specifically for movement and for strengthening his hips and his shoulder mobility. He didn't do very well on the FMS test. He scored a 0 and a 1, and I really wanted to help him out with that problem. So the two type of exercises I used, one was an upper extremity deficiency that I identified the problem, which is shoulder mobility, and I used static and dynamic warm-ups such as straight arms behind the back and arm swings to really get the shoulders warmed up. The static was being the straight arms behind the back, and the arm swings being the dynamic warm-up. Now the multi-joint exercise that I used was a push press, and I really wanted to focus on his major muscles involving the gluteus maximus, the semimembranosus, semitendinosus, excuse me if I'm saying them wrong, bicep femoris, vastus lateralis, vastus intermedius, vastus medalis, rectus femoris, soleus, gastrocnemius, and deltoids and trapezius. I felt that having the pressure going up and down really helped the deltoids and trapezius to get a little more flexible, especially after doing his arm swings and warming up also with a straight arm behind the back. Now, the next exercise plan I had for him was a lower extremity deficiency to attack the deficiency of the lower extremity, which identified the problem after the FMS, and I noticed a slight weakness of his hip flexors. So I really wanted to focus on that since he's going to be a lot of running, a lot of showing technique of his specific position group during football season. And again, I started with the static and dynamic warm-up, the forward lunge, which is a static, and also the supine knee flex, also a static exercise, but I also incorporated the walking over and under hurdles, which is a dynamic warm-up. I really focused on the adduction and abduction on his hips, again, a little more flexibility, a little more strengthening, but hopefully that warm-up will help him as he does his multi-joint exercise, which I initiated as forward step lunge, which focused the major muscles and involved the gluteus maximus, semimembranosus, semitendinosus, bicep femoris, vastus lateralis, vastus intermedius, vastus medalis, and the rectus femoris. And now here, if there's a link right underneath, you can go to that YouTube link and you can look the exercises I implemented to him, my client in the weight room, and kind of structured and guided him through all that. Now the next slide, I have the application and feint integration. Well, what I learned, and from this class and my professor is I learned how to assess the solve problems or deficiencies within my athletes or athletes to ensure success. I've always had difficulty kind of dictating what's good, what's not. I mean, I know a little, but after I did the assessments, I kind of got an understanding and how to solve problems. If a sprinter has hip problems or hamstring problems that I'm not seeing, and it really helped me out. This class actually kind of diagnosing there's certain problems, and I really want to help them for athlete success. The other thing I learned was like the structure exercise program, which is suited for each individual need. You have a football player whose structure is different than an actual track athlete, a sprinter, or a distance cross-country runner compared to a basketball player. So I really learned how to structure exercise programs suited for each individual need for success, so they could have optimal performance and do well in their sport of choice, or even if it's a novice strength and conditioning client that wants to get stronger or lose weight, or just wants to have better, healthy life. And the next, what I learned, I really enjoyed, was learning how to the proper exercise and techniques for athletes for their optimal performance. Certain foot angles, shoulder angles, spinal torso being torqued, you know, I learned a lot, and I'm really thankful for this classroom because I really know I can implement to my athletes at the high school ranks and also in the college ranks, just so that I could see them succeed and perform at their best. So at the end, I wanted to talk about my faith integration. So I found some biblical references. So here's one by Corinthians. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Now I see this as whatever you try to accomplish in the weight room or even working out, whatever you eat, drink, or whatever you do, it all goes to the glory of God. And He is the one, and you're doing everything to help yourself, but also step into the world of God and the glory, and everything you do is positive, and you want to do best for yourself, but not just for yourself, but for others. And that's how I see that reference. And another one that I found that I really enjoyed was, do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives a prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So do I not run aimlessly? I do not box as one of being in the high air, but I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. Now, I see this as much as hard you run, it's not about you. It's about the whole community working together. And that's how I see it as an athlete, you know, as a trainee and a trainer working together. We're working together for an ultimate goal. And that goal is for enlightenment, happiness. And if exercise does that, that's great. But we're not in it for to be narcissistic. We're in it for health and for the glory of God, and we want to be healthy and pass on that positive energy and helping everyone. I'm all about helping people. I'm all about, you know, seeing a client or an athlete of mine at the end of the day smile and say thank you very much for helping me out and help me further myself in my life and change my life, which I had plenty of opportunities to do. Recently I had an old athlete of mine that passed away, a young athlete, and it just really got to me because, you know, I was there for this certain athlete, and accidents happen, but he understood that not everything revolves around working out and training, but working together for the ultimate goal is to the glory of God, the man above, and also just bringing happiness and enlightenment to the world and to each individual. And then my last one is, rather train yourself for godliness, for while bodily training for some value, godliness is a value in every way, as it holds promise to the present life as also for life to come. So I see this as, you know, being a trainee or a trainer, or you're helping coaching someone for an optimal goal. You know, you're not just training yourself for that specific goal that you have. You're really training yourself to be spiritually, mentally, physically all in with Christ and God above, and in anything, every way you do anything, it helps you further on your life. I feel like it's you know, training and working together, you know, in an environment. It just helps you understand people and helps you understand each individual, how they are, how they react. Everyone comes from different cultural backgrounds, and we're all together. We're only. I feel that we're just one race, and that's you know, the race of you know, glory to God. That's how I see it. Well, the application and faith integration, that ends my conclusion of my critical assignment. Please view my my exercise program, 8-week exercise program, which I'll link to this as the end of my my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and you know, any feedback will be great. Have a great day.